Hello and welcome to another episode of our Sustainability Asia video series. My name is David Milligan. I'm a banking partner in Norton Rose Fulbright's Hong Kong office. And in this series, we talk about sustainability to clients and colleagues and how it impacts on businesses in the region. And today I'm really happy to be joined by Nat Bullard. Nat is the Chief Content Officer at BloombergNEF based in Washington, DC. Nat, welcome.
David, thank you for having me. And it's good to see you again, my old friend.
Absolutely. So what I want to talk to you about, first of all, is there's been some pretty momentous events recently in the world of ESG activism. Can you talk a little bit about what's been happening with Exxonmobil?
Certainly. This case with Exxonmobil in particular, I think, is a bit of a sea change for the world of ESG and the world of activism together. So we've seen a quite small, relatively speaking, hedge fund called Engine Number One leverage a 0.2% holding in ExxonMobil to extract 3 new board members from this biggest of the US oil companies with, as you can tell, a very, very small actual voting stake, but with buy-in from a series of big investors from California state pension funds, from institutional investors based here in the United States. And it really shows this ability to leverage a position, but in particular, a position based fundamentally on changing a business around some ESG metrics, and in particular around a response to climate change.
What would you say that means for companies more generally?
So I think it's actually worth watching because of this ability for a relatively small company to work in tandem with a series of other companies that do their own proxy voting, but that have much greater shareholdings, and to kind of create an initiative at the boardroom level to extract a lot of change without using a lot of one's own money to do so. And I think that the message that they're gathering around first is about fundamentally the performance of the company, but secondly, around the company's approach to climate change, its vision, if you will, for what the future is going to look like and how that impacts the business. And it's definitely something that we see happen in Europe more so than in the US, and in the US more so than we see in Asia. But I think I see this developing as a kind of possibility, a potentiality for companies with relatively small financial holdings to extract and affect big change out of organizations. And I think it also reflects fundamentally the importance of not just the executive suite in making ESG decisions, but the board and the board's ability to engage, willingness to engage, and its technical capacity, I think, as well, to think about what the future is going to be like in ESG terms and to help guide the company accordingly.
And so it's not necessarily enough for the incumbent board to say, yes, we know about these issues, we're working on them, they're really being pushed here. Can you talk a bit about how you think this might impact Asian companies specifically?
Yes, I think this is actually quite important for us to think about, because if we look at the activity that's happened so far, it's in places that are obviously very important, the United States and Europe, but are relatively less of a play in terms of the world of energy and resources than what we see in developed and developing East Asia and South Asia. And I think that it's very important to sort of reflect on like this change at the board level that is happening over this side of things is quite possibly a harbinger of what could be happening in Asia. And I think it's also very important because what you're talking about with companies in the United States and in Europe is sort of managing a world in which emissions are already, if not flat, then actually declining. But in Asia, that trend is definitely not the case. And so I think there's actually greater opportunity at the boardroom level to help manage companies in Asia in a way that affects greater change, that changes the trajectory, if you will, of the energy and emissions pathways that are there, as well, frankly, as the other elements of ESG, the social and the governance elements as well. So I think we should view this as a harbinger, perhaps, of what's to come, but also a place where there's great opportunity. So a relatively small change in strategy affected within the biggest leading companies in Asia could have not only a big impact on those companies, but a measurable impact as well on the global climate.
So watch this space for now. Thank you so much, Nat. It's been brilliant to talk to you. And we'll be back next week with another video.